The setting, an idyllic Indian Ocean resort near the port city of Durban. But it's been anything but smooth sailing for host nation South Africa. For the second time this year, the United States top brass snubbed a G-20 event, continuing a boycott of Pretoria. And the absence here of U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has hung over the gathering, as well as an economic outlook clouded by tariff threats, as well as escalating geopolitical tensions.
We are, of course, meeting at a moment of ongoing uncertainty in the global economy, uneven growth trajectories, elevated debt levels, persistent inflationary pressures, and the complex implications of tightening financial conditions. The multilateral system is being tested, and our collective ability to respond will shape the pace of our recovery.
My hope is that we must have an agreement and emerge with a communique tomorrow, which is something difficult over the years, starting from Indonesia. And I've been around since Indonesia. It has been a difficult period to get a communique. If we can achieve a communique where all of us agree on some of the areas of work, that to me would be a major achievement.
And I'm joined now by Bloomberg senior reporter for Africa, that's Anthony Squazine, here with us in Ballito. Anthony, thanks so much for being here. Listen, you know better than most people, South Africa came into this G20 presidency, number of ambitions and intentions, and then the Trump presidency came, and then tariffs came. What would you say will constitute a successful hosting for South Africa come the end of this year?
Well, I think if South Africa just gets some semblance of agreement, basically, we've seen the world's multilateral order under a bit of attack by this trade war, the Trump administration's comments on NATO, and all sorts of international institutions pulling of climate finance and international aid. So I think if South Africa can get as many of the members of the G20 to come together, reach some sort of consensus on what they can, especially if they can get the US to sign on to most of it, I think that will constitute a huge success for them in a very difficult year.
But climate finance, that's something the US has said they are not supportive of.
Yes, I think they're going to have to be very careful how they phrase sustainable finance and development finance in the various communiques and chairman statements that they put out between now and the end of the year.
So let's talk about sort of what has been accomplished, because a lot of the discussion has been dominated by tariffs and the tariffs that are potentially coming on August 1st. Some people say they might be overshadowing a lot of the discussions that have actually been had. I spoke to Lesetja Kganyago, which is the South African Reserve Bank governor. This is what he had to say.
For all of us who are exporting to the country that imposes tariffs, there is an impact on output. The issue about tariffs also raises important issues. We are having to grapple with what would this mean for the outlook of the U.S. economy and the posture that the Fed might take in terms of monetary policy. It is not clear where we would end up, uncertainty abound.
Anthony, from your perspective, have there actually been achievements, or have tariffs been the headline throughout this year?
I do think a lot of these events have been overshadowed by the tariffs. However, what we're hearing from the various finance ministers we've spoken to, both South Africa's, Australia's treasurer, various other ministers here, is that they are trying to see through that and come to some sort of consensus and agreement, because they do feel there's a lot of volatility in the global markets, and the more they can show unity, the better it will be for all of them. So that's the expectation.
And so, Anthony, you've been covering South Africa and Southern Africa for quite a while now. How much does the country need a win out of this hosting, especially as the first African country to host the G20 summit?
Well, I think that's the point. Africa struggles to be taken seriously in the global economy. So this was a big opportunity for South Africa, and I think it's seen it as that. I think it's been unfortunate that it's come into the presidency at the time when there has been so much noise about tariffs and various other disruptions in global politics and markets. So I think it's making the best of a very difficult situation. I think what we will see now is whether President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa can persuade Donald Trump to attend in November. And I think if we can see South Africa hand over to the US, in some ways I think they'll be glad it's all over.